one of the things that is just really wonderful about Patrick Kennedy, in my opinion, is that he is willing to very really openly share his own story as a teaching tool. In this case, at a American Society of Addiction Medicine conference, he talks about his own experiences, um, and for the purpose of illustrating the ignorance of addiction, or the ignorance of healthcare systems to the specifics of people with addiction or substance use disorders, or even in recovery, um, and not having the proper understanding, education, and attitudes in place to properly uh, provide proper services for those people who have those afflictions. And he does this in a very kind of funny way, and very engaging. So I hope you enjoy this clip.
So I had both the genetic predisposition and the environmental factors. I was living in a perfect storm for addiction. And yet, not one of my doctors, even today, has bothered to ask about my mental health and about my propensity for addiction. Even to the point, you would have thought they would have done a family history, you know. Even to the point where I leave Congress, you know, I've got a publicly alcoholic addict. I'd run my car into the police barricade, swearing I needed to go vote. And they were saying, sorry, Congressman, the votes ended about 5 hours ago. So, and here I left Congress. I'm in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and living my new life, and I'm going to my new physician to start my new medical relationship. Of course, I can't take my medical records with me, you know. So I go, I have to start it all up again, and then I go to this new doctor, and he's taking down his notes. I say, so what's your condition? I said, well, first of all, I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict. I'm also an asthmatic. I'm also, you know, I have upset stomach. I have, you know, skin issues, and, you know, I have a bad back. I had a tumor removed from my spinal cord. He said, okay, let me check you out. And then he looked through me and saw the big scar on my back and asked me about my asthma. And I said, oh, you know, I do have trouble with my asthma. And he, well, how many times do you use your inhaler? And I said, well, several times a day. Several times a day? Well, what about that long-acting in? Don't you use your, you know, air a bit? I said, well, you know, I'm depending on my Ventolin. Well, we've got to change that. I said, yeah, you're right, you're right. And he says, does it keep you up at night? You know, meanwhile, he's plugging away on his computer, updating all my history of asthma. And then, you know, he said, okay, so what can we do for you today? I said, well, you know, I'm going to be on the road a lot, Doc, and so you saw that scar on my back. You know, if you could give me a, you know, 3-month supply of Oxycontin, 20 milligrams will do fine, you know, just in case I'm on the road, I can't get back to you for you to see me. You know, you saw that scar on my back. It's really painful. And so he broke out his prescription pad, and he started writing, and then he stopped halfway through, and he said, wait a second. Didn't you tell me you were in recovery? I said, yeah. Oh. So that was the beginning of my efforts, Stu, to follow your new ASAM efforts to educate primary care physicians. I just want to let you know I'm already a member of ASAM in spirit, because I'm trying to educate primary care. So then I'm happily in recovery for about 1.5 years. I'm putting the ping pong table together for my nieces and nephew because they were coming over to play. And I tragically tried to grab the ping pong table as it was falling to the ground, collapsing, and my finger nearly got taken off. The whole top of my finger was practically missing, and blood everywhere. And, so I managed to drive myself to the ER in Atlantic City while my wife tried to find a way to handle our 3 children so that she could join me. I get to the ER, and they bring me in. They said, okay, Mr. Kennedy, what are you allergic to? I said, opiates. And the nurse's expression, she was like, what? That's what everyone comes in here for. And, okay. So they sew me up, and, I said penicillin too. They sew me up. Then they proceed to bring me a jar of Percocets and several refills. And I couldn't wait, Michael, to get to the CVS down the street from me, because I knew I had a good excuse to take a couple of those things, just for a couple of days. Not a problem, I'll titrate myself down. So luckily, my wife arrived at exactly the right moment to intervene. She was like coming in for a tackle, and grabbed. You could have enlisted her in the NFL at that point. Grabbed the script right out of the doctor's hands. She definitely would be Hall of Fame. And so because of that, I'm still sober today. And it's by the grace of God and the fact that I have a wife who understands that my primary illness, the one that's going to take me out, and I take Lipitor because they tell me in about 20 years I'll be high risk for a stroke or a heart attack. So that's what they tell me. The medical profession, you guys tell me, you want to save my life in 20 years. So you give me this thing called Lipitor so I don't have cholesterol buildup. But no one in the medical profession is trying to save me from the disease that's going to take my life tomorrow.